Welcome to the Fantasy Football Game Plan. It's week 5. We're going to do a quick review of DraftKings week 4 and then jump right into the week 5 rundown for the main slate. Hit subscribe, drop a comment with your favorite plays for week 5. Help us out. Let us know what you like because I don't really like much of anything this week. We're down to 10 games on the slate this week. We have our first set of bye weeks. Those go to the Falcons, the Bears, the Packers, and the Steelers. They're all getting a week off. And we also have an early one in London with the Vikings staying overseas and playing the Cleveland Browns. How'd you do last week?
Yeah, last week was actually one of my better weeks so far. I think we had a couple good calls, especially on like Ashton Genty and a couple of the rookies on like finally predicting. I kind of want to lean into that more. I feel like that's kind of been my strength and definitely our strength of having these conversations about players that we like that just haven't had the right opportunities or right situation to have that breakout game. I'm excited to get into this slate. I am happy that we don't have that London game on this one because that is another ugly game with especially Carson Wentz versus Dylan Gabriel. Enjoy British that live event. So I don't
I don't
know.
know,
Hopefully,
with the way, the injuries are going this season, that might be like a star matchup.
yeah. Once we get to week 10, we'll see who's on the
Yeah.
field.
See who we still have. I'm glad that we don't have to discuss the 49ers with both Pearsall and Jennings going out this week. But we do have some teams that have tons of injuries. There were some injuries that we didn't see coming, I think, this week that were kind of a surprise today here on Wednesday. So still looking back on last week, we'll look at the top 25 players. And looking at this grid, the thing that stands out is, hey, Puka's constantly there.
Yeah, Puka is that clear number one wide receiver, and I don't really think anything's going to change. I think you're going to see him and Devontae continue. The targets are so consolidated there that, we don't have him on this slate, but every single time there hasn't been a lot of pay up options, and he seems to be the standout of it's always worth it.
He definitely is. And yeah, looking at this, I mean, the next one that stands out a little bit is Christian McCaffrey. He's usually in the top 20 or usually hanging out at 20, but he cost a lot and he needs to deliver a little bit more than that. The other ones that are standing out are the ones that since week 1 have been constantly improving.
Yep.
And Kenneth Gainwell, Justice Hill is a big one. So they're constantly moving up. Woody Marks is also standing out on this list. But this is a great list, but we're losing 8 of the 25. 7 are on bye week, and then Bucky Irving is injured. And then we lose 8 more because they're in games that are off the main slate, which just leaves us 9 of this top 25 to pick from. And we're going to talk a lot about some of those players like Ashton Genty, George Pickens, Dak Prescott, Omarion Hampton, Bo Nix, Justice Hill, Justin Fields, Woody Marks, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Those are the 9 that are left from this 25.
Yeah, I think my
Um,
biggest takeaways from looking at this was those players that stepped into a bigger role due to injury and how did they actually respond. So we saw great games out of Marion Hampton, his second in a row. That backfield is completely his. He saw almost 90% of snaps. And then George Pickens actually showed up as that main target.
he
He was
did.
always kind of hit or miss in Pittsburgh, so it was really good to see that it worked.
Yeah, it was good to see him stand out and to step into that bigger role. Now we get to evaluate, can he do it 2 weeks in a row? And is he worth paying for it? Shall we jump into this week's games?
Let's get in.
All right. First up, we've got Detroit at Cincinnati. Detroit's favored by 10.5. Over under is 49.5. Cincinnati's got to contribute some points to that 49.5, don't they? Or is this just all Detroit?
Yeah, I think that 10.5 point spread is low. It feels like it's going to be 49 points for Detroit and then about half a point expected for Cincinnati if they can kick their field goal. But it's just looked bad with Browning so far, and that offensive line is not going to fix itself anytime soon. So, really, I'm only on Detroit. Do you have any interest in the Cincinnati side here?
I don't. I know they're going home, so I expect them to play better at home than he has on the road. Getting his first 2 starts on the road was kind of rough. And when he got tossed in with the Joe Burrow injury, it was at home, and he played very well at home in a different circumstance. But against Detroit, I I just don't like it. Think they're trying to figure out how this is going to work with Browning in there, and right now it isn't working. So I'm just kind of out on that Cincinnati side. Then we have the Lions side. Jared Goff. He's not going to have to pass a lot to win this game, but I feel like this is the game Detroit likes everyone to eat in their offense.
Yeah.
They want everybody to have a touchdown. So those players that haven't had their touchdowns, who haven't had that opportunity, Jameis Williams, sorry,
Jameson.
Jameson Williams, he's like on my list this week. I think they're going to want to get the ball to those players that they haven't fed the touchdowns to.
Yeah.
That it's an
And
easier game script for them.
I completely agree. I want pieces of this Lions attack, but I think getting the discount players, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Gibbs are almost 8K each. Gibbs is 7,700 and St. Brown is 7,900. So you have to pay up, but they do like spreading it around. They've talked up Williams a lot in this offseason. He hasn't really had that breakout game, so I can see him getting involved. Also, Montgomery only had 12 yards last game, so I think that's going to change here, especially if they're up big against Cincinnati.
Yeah, you have to love both of these running backs, Gibbs or Montgomery. I like to go to Montgomery because he's a discount, but I think I ended up using Gibbs in my lineup just because he's Gibbs. And we all know that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get the ball and he should be able to run all over the Bengals defense.
Yep.
I feel bad for the Bengals, Ja'Marr Chase. Is there any way he can have a good day here?
I don't think here, but I think brighter days are ahead. These have been some of the best secondary units in the entire NFL these past 3 weeks. They've had to go against the Vikings, the Denver, and then this week they get the Lions. So I think there are brighter days ahead. I just don't like them in this matchup. I think it's going to be kind of a beatdown. I would take the Lions minus 10.5.
Well, I guess DraftKings is right there with you, thinking that there are brighter days for the Bengals players because they did not discount these Bengal players even after an awful 2 weeks. So Ja'Marr Chase didn't drop, Chase Brown didn't drop. You're not getting any discount here, which is probably why we're both just going, yeah, one of the reasons I'm not going to buy into it. Just no one got a price drop. I
Yeah.
still don't understand why Jameson Williams did $1,000 price drop for Jameson Williams. That makes no sense.
Yeah, he hasn't been too productive, but I mean, he's that big play explosive receiver. It really just takes a couple plays for him to have a great day.
Yeah, I think this might be his week, so I do like using him in lineups. Well, let's move on to the Raiders at Indianapolis. I think we were both trying to just avoid this game. I actually think it goes well for the Colts, but the Colts are favored by 7 at home and the over under is 48 points. This smells like a Jonathan Taylor game to me.
Well, I got a little worried when you said you actually believe in the Colts in this matchup because I'm like, I feel like it's been a while since we both think the Colts are going to kind of roll in this matchup, and it does line up well for them. So that kind of worries me a little bit, but I mean, everything on paper says the Colts offense should have a good day.
Definitely. I don't like this game to stack. I don't see it hitting 48 points. Do you?
I think it could. It's really just going to come down to whether or not Vegas can keep pace. We've already seen, I mean, as evident by that Tutu Atwell 80-yard touchdown, the Colts defense is going to take chances, and they're going to have a couple shots. It's just whether or not those actually connect and Vegas can make this a competitive matchup. I don't think they're going to have really any success on the ground. I think it's going to have to come from an explosive play in the passing.
Yeah, let's talk about Geno Smith a little bit. He keeps throwing interceptions. He threw 3 last week. I do like the Colts defense in this matchup and paying up for them at 3,300 at home. I just don't see Geno Smith hanging in this game. This isn't the Colts on the road in LA with Matthew Stafford at quarterback, going over top. This is Geno Smith throwing interceptions in Indianapolis.
Yeah. I think you're hoping for a little bit of that Jameis Winston old Buccaneers formula of like maybe the Colts get a couple short fields and we get some easy touchdowns. They're behind. They're trying to look for these plays, but I don't think that's going to work very well. I kind of do like the Colts. The one thing I want to point out just for the Colts offense and how it's going to be attacking this Raiders defense is the Raiders are one of the most prominent zone coverage teams. Like, I mean, everyone plays zone, but the Raiders are basically like leading the league or like one of the top teams as far as like cover three rates. And that has kind of been the perfect formula for that Steichen Jones mind meld. And especially like Michael Pittman and Tyler Warren in there, that's kind of been his answers for this zone attack. But it's really able to those plays where Steichen can scheme it up and make it easy for Jones. So I think he's going to be very successful on his plays, especially if this game is neutral for at least a half.
So does that mean that you have interest in Daniel Jones,
I
or are you out on both these quarterbacks?
I am fine stacking up Jones, probably with that Pittman Warren stack. In a couple of my lineups, it's more of just do I even want a Raiders piece? Ashton Genty had 3 touchdowns. We finally saw that breakout. Do you think he could do it? Any way that he could pay off a 6,700 price tag? Wow, they moved him up a lot.
Yeah, they moved him up a lot, and he had really been struggling going into last week, and then even the first quarter of that game, I think I was texting you that I was going to lose my mind if he didn't have a good day, and he was having not such a good day in that first quarter, and then he kind of broke out and had some good runs. I think he takes a step back this week against the Colts defense, and this isn't his week. I look for the Colts to go up kind of early, and maybe it is that Daniel Jones and Michael Pittman combination or Warren as well. I just don't know that they have to do a whole lot to win this game to give us the points that we need in a tournament stack.
Yeah. The person I've been using on the bring back has not been Genty. It's actually been Dante Thornton, still just taking shots with him. He's getting some targets. He's getting those deep targets. They're just not converting. It kind of reminds me of Marvin Mims a couple of years ago, where you're like, I'm watching him on the field. He's getting open. They're taking shots to him. It's just not working yet. And you're hoping that he can get 2 of those plays and have himself a good day. So that's the only way. I think this is basically like a tournament only game that the Raiders don't show up, how we're kind of thinking that it's just going to be some average performances spread out across the Colts, and none of them are going to be need to have pieces.
Yeah, if you're on the over game for this and you think this is the game, there are lots of great pieces to stack here on especially the Colts side. I just don't feel it on the Vegas side. Okay.
All right.
Next up, we've got the Washington Commanders at Los Angeles Chargers. Chargers are favored by 3. Over under is 48. It looks like we are getting Jaden Daniels back this week. How do you feel about do you like Jaden Daniels or Justin Herbert in this matchup?
I really don't. I do like pieces in this game, but Daniels just worries me of being back from the injury, and especially a knee injury for a mobile quarterback. A lot of Daniels' upside comes from his scrambling ability, not just being an in the pocket passer. So I think it kind of caps him, and he's not really getting a discount. I mean, he's still 7K, so he's one of the more expensive options at quarterback here. And then Herbert, it's all about the tackles. They're going to be lining up their third and fourth with Joe Alt down, and I mean Slater's gone for the year too. So as soon as Alt went down, that Giants defensive line was living in the backfield. So I'm kind of worried about the Chargers passing attack. I'm curious how they try to negate those offensive line weaknesses. Washington isn't the best pass rush. They're about league average, but I think they might lean more into that running game and just continue to feed Hampton more to protect Herbert because they know they're going to need him later in the year.
And they should be able to run Hampton. So I do like parts of the Chargers offense. I do like Omarion Hampton since that is his backfield. And we did see that the Commanders gave up 29 points to Bijan Robinson in week 4. They also gave up, 24 points to Drake London last week as well. So I'm not eliminating the Chargers wide receivers, but I guess I'm more interested in Omarion Hampton.
Yeah, I agree.
In this just feels like a very defensive game. How do we get to 48 points in this? I'm
That's
these
where
point
I'm wondering.
yeah. These totals are confusing to me of the three games that we've talked about here. At least this one I feel like it's a little bit more even. The first two were kind of blowouts, and this one I'm not really sure where it's going, but there are enough injuries that I have doubts.
Yeah, it feels almost like one of those players with the one that keeps coming to my mind. I keep thinking about, or it's like it's due. He's gonna have some good games, Lad McConkey, because it's just like it feels impossible that he's gonna be bad all year. And we've seen the Commanders give up some huge performances. They're very man heavy. Which kind of allows like when you see McConkey one on one against, especially if they're shifting coverages towards Johnston or Keenan Allen and he's on that second cornerback or even third cornerback, we know that McConkey's talented enough to win those matchups, and he's going to have some breakout games throughout the season.
Well, if you believe in him, DraftKings discounted him $1,000 this week. He's down to 5,500. Maybe he's a good fill-in. He did get 6 targets last week,
Yeah,
but
he only came
Quentin,
down with one of those. He had some
yeah,
uncharacteristic drops. So, with that and how long can the offensive line hold up in coverage, he's like really a tournament only, like a long shot, but he'd be
so
different.
are you still surprised when you look at these charts, every week and you're like, Quentin Johnston, yes,
Yeah,
I thought you would be getting 13 targets in games.
no, he is for real. He is, and I don't know, like if you if we just knew, if we didn't have the past 2 years of Quentin Johnson tape, and
Yeah,
like we just said he was a rookie, this would be like a top 3 player in the league that people would think of, and like it would be incredible. But just because we have 2 years of evidence that this doesn't make any sense, I mean, we have to believe it. He has been looking like a completely different player, and I think you can still play him. I mean, his price continues to climb, but 5,700 for his production is too cheap.
very true. All right, let's move it on. We've got the Dallas Cowboys at the New York Jets. Dallas surprising us with scoring 40 points in the
Yeah.
matchup against Green Bay last week. And then the Jets are still looking for a win. Dallas is favored by 2.5, and the over-under is 47.5. What do you think in this game?
This is probably my favorite game on the slate. And it's basically just the Dallas defense and how much they're giving up. So they gave up 40 points to Green Bay. They gave up 37 to the Giants. They gave up 31 the week before, or the week in between, week 3. I forget who did they play. They played, oh yeah, the Bears, and Caleb Williams annihilated them. With that defense and how consolidated the Jets are for fantasy, I think it's really great. I'm interested in like all 3 options for the Jets.
All three options. So let's talk quarterbacks. Justin Fields. You're in on Justin Fields. Any interest in Dak Prescott? Both of these quarterbacks were two of the higher scoring for last week, with Dak Prescott getting almost 34 points and Justin Fields at 28 points. Which side, or do you like both sides?
I'm gonna go with Fields just for that rushing baseline. I feel like it's a lot more consistent. And I mean, Dak had a rushing touchdown and then 3 passing touchdowns on top of that. But that's not going to happen every game. We know that. I think the carries for Justin Fields, that 7 carries, especially with no Braylon Allen anymore, that might even bump that up. So I like Justin Fields at a slight discount compared to Dak too.
Okay, so the game script here, let's talk about this one a little bit because if it's Justin Fields, they're down. Somehow the Cowboys got up. Maybe it's their defense, whatever. They're down at home and they're passing,
hmm
and Justin Fields is running. Are you matching him with Garrett Wilson?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we do think that Justin Fields has a rushing baseline, but the main weakness of this Cowboys attack has been the amount of yards they're giving up through the air. And Green Bay kind of did it in the aggregate, but Garrett Wilson is like the only target for the Jets. And I just kind of want pieces of that attack that I think is going to be very productive. And yeah, Garrett Wilson's target share for the Jets right now is 36.5%, which is insane. So if I told you, the Jets score 33 points, which it would be a lot, but I mean, not uncommon against this Cowboys defense. How do they have a bad day?
I don't know. The only way they have a bad day is that suddenly Dallas can't score points again. that we
Yeah.
see Dallas show up and just turn in a dud and have nothing for them. But
Hmm.
I mean, the Jets just lost to Miami, and Miami looked pretty good. I do like Pickens in this. I mean, we saw what Tyreek Hill was doing to the Jets defense before he dislocated his knee. He was having a great night. And so I kind of like George Pickens to be in the mix here. And the only way I feel that we get that high enough scoring game out of Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson is if it's kind of matched on the Cowboys side. So a lot of times we do look for those one-sided games and you're stacking the quarterback and the wide receiver and running it back with the running back. But in
Hmm.
this case, I feel like both sides have got to just keep scoring for this to be the game that I want lots of pieces in. I think that can happen in this game. But for that reason, then I don't really care which quarterback. I lean towards Justin Fields because he costs less and he does come with more of a running upside. I do like that. I like Garrett Wilson. I like Brees Hall and I like George Pickens and I like Javonte Williams in all of this. I don't like the defenses of either of these. This is one of those games that it's like, yeah, just toss them all in and see if this is the game or not of the week. How about you?
Yeah. That you feel like spoiled for choice, and I think that'll kind of limit the amount of roster percentage because there's so many options. The one option I want to bring up is Ferguson because he's been such a critical part of that passing attack for the Cowboys, especially with CD gone. His targets on the year 6, 12, 14, and 7. He's heavily involved in this passing attack, and it's kind of been a weakness. I mean, it's we're still early in the season, but the Jets have allowed, I think, 3 touchdowns so far, 2 tight ends on the year. They allowed Darren Waller to have a great game on Monday night and a couple of
Yeah.
the Steelers tight ends as well when they played them. I like Ferguson, especially because they are searching for those other options. It can't just be only Pickens. I think Pickens can have a great day, but for it to be a blow up game, he's going to have to be involved.
Yeah. That's the question. Can this be the blow up game or not? The Jets haven't been giving up big numbers. The most that they gave up was James Cook in week 2, but it feels like the perfect storm that they could have a big blow up game in New
Yeah,
York.
and I think the way to get different and kind of the general strategy for this game, if you think this is going to be the game, fully lean into it.
Yeah.
Have 5 pieces from this game
Like
because the rest of the slate is not tempting. And
eh,
I think people get worried about having so much on one game, but you got to just commit. And I'm fine having the 3 pieces on the Jets and then even like a Ferguson Pickens double bring back.
yeah, I don't mind it at all. I'll probably give that a go and see how it pans out cuz it might happen.
Hmm.
You never know in a tournament. All right, let's move on to Miami at Carolina. Miami is favored by 1 and the over under is 44 and a half. I don't know why Miami's favored, but in Carolina that feels a little bit wrong to me. I feel like the Panthers play much better at home, but I've got that, really small sample because they've only played one game at home and they shut
And
out
they
the
look great.
Falcons.
Yeah.
They look great. So they must play better at home than they do on the road. The Panthers haven't been good. The most fantasy points they've allowed was to Drake May last week, and that was only 23. They really force the other teams to spread the ball around, or the other teams choose to spread the ball around because they're beating up on the Panthers. I'm not really sure which one that
Yeah.
is.
I think you got to
I Go ahead.
I think they can kind of plan the attack against the Panthers and then kind of give the points how they want to. But Miami's kind of limited to options, especially with Tyreek Hill now gone for the season.
Yeah, I think let's get the quarterbacks out of the way. I think we're out on all of these quarterbacks. We saw a little bit of Andy Dalton last week too, but Tua, Bryce Young, Andy Dalton, I don't care.
Yeah,
I don't want any part of any of those quarterbacks.
nothing here.
All right, let's move on to the flex side of this game. Are you using any pieces from this game?
The one name that kind of stands out, and I do like a couple pieces, especially with Tyreek Hill's injury not being really accounted for in the price. These prices were released before the Monday night games and they knew the injuries.
Yes.
So they're not really accounting for that. I think you get a couple discounts on Miami. Darren Waller somehow looks relevant again. And then Jalen Waddle and Devon Achan. I kind of lean Achan just it seems like they're going more reverting back to what they were at the end of last year of those short targets, Achan, tight end, keep the chains moving, but nothing really explosive to Waddle. And then for the Panthers, the name I want to bring up and talk about is McMillan.
Yeah, we got to talk about McMillan. He's definitely a favorite, but I want to go back to Achan really quick. Last week, he didn't have a big game. He hasn't had a big game so far this year. He's having good games, and if he's on your, redraft fantasy league, he's doing his job, but he's not getting it done at his $8,000 price tag. He's 7,300 this week. He didn't get a discount because he played on Monday night, but he's still the back there. They're starting to share it just a little tiny bit, but not really. And you could tell on Monday night that they really wanted him involved, and the Jets really weren't letting that happen. They were forcing him to pass more. I'm not sure that Carolina is going to make them pass more. So I do like Devon Achan. He is one of those players that I'm just waiting for him to have his big game. But I think you're on that with T Mac as well.
Yeah, I really like McMillan in this spot. He's been such a crucial part of the Panthers attack. They really don't have other answers right now in the wide receiver game. This team needs those pieces to get healthy. Jalen Coker to come back from IR. I think even like David Moore. We might see rookie Jimmy Horn finally playing some serious snaps in this game. But I like McMillan. He has 35 targets on the year, and a lot of those just have not converted to actual productive measurements, but he looked good. Like when I watch the games and tune in, he always has a couple plays that it's like, wow, okay. He looks like the real deal. He just hasn't had the numbers to back it up in the stats yet. And I think it comes against this Miami defense that Garrett Wilson was doing whatever he wanted against. They just didn't target him too much.
I agree. I do like T Mac. So why isn't like this your big game? Like we were all over the last game, Dallas and the New York Jets, which seems about the same kind of matchup as this one. But are there just too many injuries here for this to be a giant blow up game?
Yeah, I think there's too many injuries. Both of these teams kind of keep a slower pace too. Both play callers seem to feel a need to protect their quarterback and like try to keep a consistent rushing attack. They are not going to let this quarterback just do whatever they want and have the keys to the car and have a blow up spot here. So I think with both sides doing that, we'll probably get a competitive game throughout. We'll probably have a neutral game script, and we won't really have those opportunities where, a team needs to come back. So they're passing heavy and just a spot here.
Yeah, I can see that. One other thing I wanted to kind of discuss is Chuba Hubbard. In the past, he's been like the sole, it was his backfield. He was the Carolina running back, but this year it seems like we are seeing a lot more Rico Dowdle, and they're sharing it.
Yeah. And I don't think Chuba Hubbard was efficient enough that if they're starting to eat into his workload, that was kind of the best thing about Hubbard for fantasy was just
Yeah.
he was getting the ball every time.
Yeah. So he's been out of the lineups for me. All right, let's move on to Tampa Bay at Seattle. 2-3-1 teams. Seattle is favored by 3.5. Over under is 44.5. I'm surprised this game isn't higher. I think this is a game that we don't quite agree with. I know we've got Mike Evans out. Looks like we are going to lose Bucky Irving as well this week since he was on crutches today and to boot. But I still like Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield on the road as an underdog, he loves it. He just like thrives in those conditions. And I don't know. I can't get past using Baker Mayfield this week. Maybe I just love the Bucks.
Godwin did make his return, so he does have that help. And like every week, he'll probably get a little bit better. But missing Bucky Irving is going to be a huge loss. Like no Bucky and no Mike Evans. I think that's just a crucial part of the offense. And against a really talented Seattle defense, having limited weapons is going to go a long way. I think it's going to be kind of game dragged down in the mud, and both teams are going to try to run the ball, but not really be that effective. And I can see a lower scoring game here. I kind of lean towards the under, but it's just, do we have some options with the limited attacks. I mean, Ibuka and JSN are basically the only receivers left for the two teams.
Exactly. And I lean towards Baker, but on the quarterbacks, I can go either way. Sam Darnold's fine in this matchup as well. I think he'll have his day with the Buccaneers defense, but I see both of these teams kind of having their way with the others' defense and just going on a pass happy attack. So I like Mayfield, Ibuka, JSN. I even like Sterling Shepard to get more involved, and he is at 3,900 this week, so I don't mind popping him into the lineup as well.
Hmm.
On running backs for the Bucks, if Bucky Irving is out, I don't think we saw his injury really coming. I didn't. I was really surprised when I got the news today that it looked like he wasn't playing. And DraftKings apparently didn't get the memo either because they dropped Rashad White $200 this week. Do you have any interest? 47, is he 4,700? He's not 47. Yeah,
He
4,700 for Rashad White or in Sean Tucker or Josh Williams at they're both at 4K.
I really like Rashad White here. I mean, I just think he's the more trusted back. And given the turnaround, maybe if this was like a long-term injury and like they were coming off a bye, we'd see more of the other running backs come into play. But this is a veteran. This is a person that was a starter for this organization for a couple years. And I think he's going to get a lot of the trust right away. For 4,700, for someone that's heavily involved in the passing attack and going to see a majority of the carries, that is just way too cheap, regardless of how good Seattle's defense is. Just that workload alone, I think, will pay off that price tag.
I think so too. I did think it was interesting. I was watching Baker Mayfield's press conference this afternoon, and he's just pushing up Josh Williams.
Hmm.
I'm quite interested to see how much Josh Williams plays a factor in the backfield. He was talking about him even more than Sean Tucker,
Really,
which is
because
very
I mean,
interesting.
Sean Tucker has been the one in the past that I think has looked the best. I think he's looked more explosive than Rashad White, and he's had limited times where he gets like 8 carries and he does great work with them, and that's all the team will give him. And you're like, why won't you give him more of an opportunity? But we'll see.
How about Kenneth Walker or Zach Charbonnet? Any interest?
I don't think here Tampa Bay's just been too good against the run to really consider a split backfield, and you're
Yeah.
not really getting a discount. I mean, 6,300 at his starting running back price for a split backfield.
Yeah, I don't see it either. All right, let's move on to Denver at Philadelphia. Favored is Philadelphia by 3.5, and over under is 43.5. I'm interested here. Two good teams that are going to have to play aggressively, just like they both did last week. And we saw Jalen Hurts score 19.4 points, and Bo Nix almost hit 30. Bo Nix at 5,700 is very interesting in this matchup. What do you think?
I'm on the other side. I think both of these defenses are going to have a lot of control in this game. And I feel like the offenses are going to be tasked more of don't make the critical mistake to have us lose this game as long as our defense is making plays. Like if we see Philly come out to a huge lead, then I like it, but I just don't. I see this being a competitive game, a slower game, and especially if Philadelphia is not pushed to do anything on offense by the Broncos, then they're fine with this just being like a 17-10 game.
The Broncos just let Jonathan Taylor go for 32 points. Could Saquon finally have his day?
Yeah, we've been waiting for him. I mean, I don't know about you, but Saquon just hasn't had that
Mm-mm.
second move in the once he gets to the second level. I felt like every single time last year he was making that person miss and he was getting another 5-10 yards and then having those breakaway runs. And so far it's more of he's getting what's blocked for him. He's breaking a tackle here and there, but it hasn't looked exactly the same. I don't think this is his spot here, but it's got to come one of these days, doesn't it?
It does. And after watching the Broncos against Jonathan Taylor last week and watching Taylor break loose on two big plays, it could be Saquon's. If it doesn't happen, for at least, I mean, his longest run last week was 10 yards. He's got
Yep.
to do better than that, especially after watching Jonathan Taylor do it against this defense.
Yeah.
But in overall, this just isn't the game that I'm taking lots of parts. We did finally see Marvin Mims show up last week and get 20 points. Mims and Troy Franklin they're cheap, 3,800 and 4,000. So I have in my lineups been paying for Jonathan Taylor and Jahmyr Gibbs. And the way I save is going to this game with Mims or Troy Franklin and using those cheap wide receivers to kind of save some money elsewhere so I can spend up.
I really like Franklin here. I think you are getting a discount for he's been very consistent, the number 2 target right there with Sutton. Sutton has gotten more of the production, but it's been very promising just how Franklin's being used in this offense. Mims kind of got a couple explosive plays, and that made him have the huge day. But I think Franklin is the more consistent one, and he's going to have more consistent value, especially at a 4K price tag.
There are a lot of players on the Broncos that are cheap. RJ Harvey, it's obvious that Sean Payton is trusting him more. He got 14 carries last week, so he's setting, Sean Payton records, I guess. But he's still at 4,500. They didn't bump him up. And at 4,500, and he had almost 20 points last week, he would have paid for himself easily. If he can see that again this week, then, and
Yeah,
he's used as in the passing game as well.
yeah, that'll be interesting. But the kind of caveat to how good he was last week was it was against the Bengals. They were up big. He looked really good in his touches, but most of those touches came after Dobbins had already done most of his work on the ground. A lot of the production that he had was when the game was already in hand, and I don't really like him in this spot against Philly. The only way would be if they get down dramatically and he's that pass catching back kind of outlet for Knicks.
Yeah.
What about AJ Brown? What do we do with him? He's still 6K. He's still got 9 targets, but he had 7 yards. So can we go back to him?
I don't feel like I can trust him. I'm not sure what is wrong with this pass game here, but I don't think I can go in on him.
Yeah. It feels like a couple years ago where the offense just isn't working. It's just not kind of looking good. They do have a new play caller, so I don't know if that's part of the issue. But
they are
they're
getting
doing
it done. But
yeah. They're doing just enough. So
it feels like Kansas City last year doing just enough to win games. All right, let's move on to Tennessee at Arizona. Arizona is favored by 8. Over-under is 41.5. Not only did the Cardinals lose Connor, but now they've lost Trey Benson as well.
Yeah, that kind of came out of nowhere that suddenly he's on IR. And
yeah, he had surgery.
Wow. Yeah, it is kind of a bummer because I was excited for him in this spot against Tennessee. Everyone's been able to run all over Tennessee, and now we're going to have to try to figure out who's the next man up and are they worth it?
Yeah, I picked him up in waivers last night and found out he had surgery this afternoon. Not good. So let's talk a little bit about it. We've got Kyler Murray and Cam Ward.
Yep.
Any interest in Kyler Murray? Do you think Kyler Murray will have to run more with the lack of a running back?
I'm a little interested in Kyler Murray because he just chooses like random games to show up for. He had a couple interceptions that kind of prevented him from having a great game last Thursday, but those interceptions weren't necessarily his fault. One of them, he had a lot of the blame on, but the other one, Harrison, the defender, I think he's looked all right here, and I think Tennessee could make him look very good by comparison. So especially at home, I think he is kind of due for that good game. I mean, Kyler Murray at 5,900 just seems like a discount, especially he's running a little bit more this year than he was his previous year.
Yeah, he does. The question will be, does he need to run against the Titans or not? And how much will he need to do? But maybe Cam Ward will have an average day at least and not a bad day.
I don't know.
It's the
It's
Titans
rough.
on the road. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to pick the Cardinals as my survivor pick, but with all the injuries, I'm a little bit concerned about doing that.
The Cardinals currently locked up as my survivor pick, but
all right, there you go.
It might just go Tennessee's schedule at this point.
The Titans gave up 35 points to Jonathan Taylor and 27 points to Woody Marks in back-to-back weeks. We now have the backup running backs for the Arizona Cardinals. So we've got Amari DiMercado, and then who is after that? Michael Carter. So they're bringing them both in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of more interested in Michael Carter. There was one game in 2023 where DiMercado had 20 carries, and he came in as a backup, and he had that one game, and he got hurt, and he missed the next 3 weeks. I feel like they have to play it safe and maybe share the workload across these two running backs because they haven't been playing that much. The workload hasn't been there, so you can't just throw them in and go, you're going to play the whole game and expect them not to get hurt. And then
Yeah.
DeMercado is also heavily involved on their special teams. So he's already on the field for that part. That's part of the reason why Michael Carter, even though he's fourth on the depth chart, has been inactive because he doesn't play on special teams. So I'm kind of wondering how much more of Michael Carter we see, especially if this game ends up being more of a blowout for the Cardinals.
No, I think that's a good read because DeMarcado is more of that pass catching back. He has 9 receptions on the year compared to 17 carries. That role and those running backs that play that role typically never get asked to shoulder the full workload when the running back ahead of them goes down. They typically continue their role and we see another player fill in. So I think Michael Carter at 4K is kind of the direction I want to go in a really positive game script at home against Tennessee. So I like that value. I don't know how much the field's going to play him because he had 1 rush for 1 yard last week and he has no stats. So I think he's a good place to get different if everyone wants to go on DeMarcado and you're seeing those high roster percentages trying to get that backup running back. Michael Carter is a great pivot who might get just a majority of that work.
Yeah, I like the play and I like saving so I can pay someplace else.
Yeah, we saw a
That's
couple games last year when James Conner went down. Last year at the end of the year, Carter was the lead back and got 15 and 21 touches in the final 2 games of the season. So
he can definitely play that role, and I think he steps into it a little bit more because I don't think we've all known exactly how much Amari DiMercado has already been playing on that special teams role, and he's been in on those pass catching downs too. Some any Titans players that you can buy into?
no, I think the only one you have to even think about is A.O. Manor. He's been the top receiver, but I'm not. Do you like a bounce back spot for Harrison McBride?
Yeah, maybe Trey McBride a little bit more than Marvin Harrison. Harrison had a good week last week. We saw him finally step up and make a couple catches that he needed to, and he finally got a touchdown. We haven't seen Trey McBride. The problem is he's expensive, and it's probably just not where I'm choosing to spend up on
Yeah.
the slate. I don't know that he'll have a big enough day to pay for 5,800.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I'm off of McBride. I think I'm kind of interested in Harrison, more of just the kind of like personal level where he needed some success at the second half of last week,
Yeah.
and now to carry that over and build some momentum. Now you got the Titans, so if you need like a cupcake matchup to boost your top wide receiver, maybe you feed him a couple red zone.
This is true. I do like that. You know, if you view this more as you get a little bit of practice, he gets to gain some confidence, then Marvin Harrison Jr. definitely could be worth 20 points. I don't really see him being worth the 30 or 40 that I'm necessarily looking for out of my wide receiver, but he is only 5,400.
Yeah, in very small tournaments, probably not like the Millie Maker or anything.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, next up, we've got the New York Giants at the New Orleans Saints. The Saints are favored. They've not won a game, and they are favored at home by 2. Over-under is 41. If either of these teams could get out of their own way and keep the ball moving, then this could be a fun game, but I'm not really buying into it. I did love watching Jackson Dart last week. He rushed 10 times.
Yeah.
But he got banged up doing it, so hopefully he's going to be okay going this week. And we lost Malik Neighbors. Well, did we already lose him? Was he already? No, he did
No,
play
that was
last week.
last week.
Yeah.
He tore his ACL.
All my injuries are blurring. There seem to
I
be
thought
more each day.
the Saints looked kind of feisty against the Bills. They made it more of a game than people thought, and they kind of hung in there until for a good amount.
Yeah, they definitely did. They had to have that bounce back after looking so bad the week before that against Seattle. But they did look fairly good against the Bills. Do you have any interest in Jackson Dart or Spencer Rattler?
It feels like kind of trying to force it to have any interest. I think Dart, he was rushing a lot, but then he gets banged up in week 1, and this is your quarterback for the season. Like, you don't want to put Russell Wilson back out there. I think they'll trust him a little bit more, but now you don't have Neighbors. It feels like maybe a lot of short passes to Wandale to try to keep that going, or probably what it is a lot of Cam Scatabo this game.
Probably. I also don't like that DraftKings bumped him up $800. Jackson Dart moved $800 up to $5,300, so that's getting a little bit too pricey for what he's doing right now and trying to figure things out. And Spencer Rattler, it's just Spencer Rattler.
Yeah.
There's not a lot I like here. Let's go to the wide receivers, running backs, and tight ends. So Kendre Miller and Alvin Kamara are seeming to be in a bit of a share of that backfield, much to my surprise. And Kendre Miller is still healthy. Does that end this week?
Hopefully not,
Or
because Kendre Miller looked good, and I was very surprised and impressed by how good he looked. And Kamara's getting up there in age. I kind of like taking a shot on Kamara to, this might be their one game they're favored in all year, and the one game they might actually be playing with a lead in all year. Alvin Kamara is not going to have too many shots. We know he's still talented. We know he's going to be a crucial part of the offense. It did kind of worry me that Miller was so involved, but I think Kamara is a good tournament play this week at a $5,900 price.
I'm not there. I'm just kind of out on all these players. I'm looking at all their scores from last week. Nobody's super impressive. Nobody's really super cheap. It just feels like a game of a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to make it on a lot of TVs this week. But I am kind of excited about our next game.
All right, let's get to it. We've got Houston at Baltimore. Houston's favored by 2 in Baltimore.
Yeah.
Over-under is 40.5. This over-under seems low, where a lot of our other ones seem high for teams that, Baltimore's definitely not stopping anyone. They have no defense.
They really don't. And they lost 3 additional starters last
On
week.
defense?
On defense. So they lost Marlon Humphrey, Roquan Smith, and then their all-pro D-tackle. I'm blanking on his name. But they lost all 3 of those. So it's just going to get worse.
That's crazy. So I remember you telling us last week that CJ Stroud hadn't been over 20 points for over a year. And then I saw his projections this week, and he's projected at 22 points. Is it finally CJ Stroud's week?
He did get close last week. He got to 18.4. So maybe he is trending the right direction. That offense at least looked viable, but it was against the Titans. Do we think the Ravens defense is worse than the Titans? Because that would be his 20 point.
They do seem to be worse than. I think the thing about the Ravens is everyone at least perceives they need to score a lot of points to beat the Ravens, so they don't let up, where I think everyone feels a little bit sorry for the Titans and they let up, they take their foot off the gas. But you can't when Lamar Jackson's in there. That's the problem in this game, is we are probably looking at no Lamar Jackson in this game, but we're getting Cooper Rush, who has delivered games before.
He has, and he's looked pretty good as filling in as a backup role. The one thing I do want to point out is, because I kind of have 2 ways that this game goes. I kind of think I like Houston to win this game. They are the favorite now, but I think just Lamar Jackson has been keeping that team afloat, and that defense is so bad that he shouldn't really be competitive. But if Houston's defense shows up and doesn't ask a lot for that offense, they're a $2,200 price tag. They're like one of the cheapest defenses on this entire slate. So they feel like such a good value against a backup quarterback with a talented secondary.
Yeah, I think we should be all over the Houston's defense. And when we look at what Baltimore's allowed, they've allowed Josh Allen to have 41 points, David Montgomery 32, Keon Coleman 28, Patrick Mahomes 27, Jahmyr Gibbs 26. It goes on. These are some of the top performing players each week that are playing this defense that just took another setback. So if we go in on CJ Stroud at 5,200, if he hits projections, he's almost 4 times already. Yeah. Is there any way that CJ Stroud does it without Nico Collins?
I don't see a way that would be possible. I also don't think he could do it without Christian Kirk having a good game either. Maybe if one of the rookies take a step up, but I think a lot of people are going to want to go to Woody Marks here against the Ravens defense after his great performance last week. But if I like Houston here, I want to go away from Marks and lean into that Stroud, Kirk, Nico Collins stack, because the only way that Stroud gives you a week-winning performance as a pocket passer is if his two wide receivers go off. It's not if Woody Marks is involved at all. So I like
Exactly.
either going that stack or the Woody Marks and like maybe the defense.
I do like that stack, and I feel like just like we talked about in the Cardinals, that they need to get their players some confidence. That
Hmm.
that needs to happen here. I think we forget how young CJ Stroud is, and he had his great first year, and then last year wasn't so good, and this year hasn't started off so good. And they really need to get some confidence for him. And this defense seems like the place to do it.
I agree, because the main thing that we've been talking about all year and all offseason for the Texans is they're not going to be able to do anything against a team with a good pass rush. But Ravens have no pass rush right now, and it just got worse. So I think he is going to have time in the pocket to deliver it to these downfield wide receivers.
Anybody on the Ravens side that you're looking at?
I do want to have some discussion on what do we do with Derrick Henry? I mean, a backup quarterback says that we should see a lot of Derrick Henry, but if Baltimore gets down, he's been one of the most game script dependent running backs. You know, he does great in wins, and then he
Yep.
kind of gets removed off the field for Justice Hill whenever they're trailing.
And I like Justice Hill.
Yeah,
I see them trailing in this game, and I like more Justice Hill than I do Derrick Henry, especially with a backup quarterback.
I agree. I like
And their wide
Hill as a
receivers
bring
have
back.
been non-existent. So yeah, you could bring it back with Justice Hill for sure.
Yeah, Zay Flowers was targeted a lot once Cooper Rush came in, just those short targets, but not against this Texans secondary, not for his
Yeah.
price tag.
Well, let's move on to lineups. I don't have a lot that I truly love this week, and what I do love, you don't like, because I went with Baker on the road just because he likes that underdog role. And then I could pay up for Jahmyr Gibbs and Jonathan Taylor. And any lineup where I have Emeka Ibuka and Jackson Smith-Njigba, I'm going to be rooting for it. So I kind of like that.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that'll be a fun game to watch. I leaned into the Cowboys game and then the Colts stack. In one of my lineups, I went full Jets and had Fields, Brees Hall, Garrett Wilson, and then Jake Ferguson on the bringback. And then I like Kamara having a good game and McMillan finally having that breakout performance we've been expecting. Then I paid up for a couple Lions. I'm always just going to be scattering those Lions around these lineups with Amon-Ra St. Brown and David Montgomery in this one and the Seahawks defense. The other one, I took a Colts stack of Jones, Pittman, and Tyler Warren. And then Dante Thornton finally showing out and having just that one breakout play, hoping for that Tutu Atwell repeat, basically. And then I like having the Woody Marks and Texans defense if the defense just takes control. And then my couple Lions, of course, are Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown with the savings in that lineup.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and look at that Baltimore game a little bit more now that we've talked about it. I think I might have to do a lineup there and see what I can do.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely going to need some tournament lineups with the Texans
Yeah,
Stroud stack.
and that defense, definitely. So that's all for our week 5 main slate. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hit subscribe, leave us a comment on your favorite stacks, and let us know what you think and which plays you like. And don't miss that early game in London again this Sunday.